This is Copper Mountain in the Colorado Rockies. And this is Banff Sunshine in the Canadian Rockies. And this is Alpe d'Huez in the European Rockies, otherwise known as Les Rockies. So, what do these places have in common other than being destination ski resorts? They bought chairlifts from these two conglomerates, the Doppelmayr-Garaventa Group and the High Technology Industries, or HTI Group. As it turns out, these two conglomerates alone control the lion's share of the global ski and snowboard lift market after lifts evolved from this to this in a generation. But why exactly are there only two companies in the entire world that are cut out for it? Well, as it turns out, sourcing materials for and building ski lifts is a lot like enjoying the tasty hors d'oeuvres my landlord keeps leaving in my basement. Incredibly difficult and loaded with risk. Ski lifts are usually divided between aerial lifts, which look like these, and surface lifts, which look like these. Having the necessary components, which range from winterized motors to rubber tracks to steel tubes to load-bearing cables, can be a challenge in its own right, but when a multi-million-dollar ski area is relying on these parts to create a safe, easy ride for visitors, it can be even more daunting. For a typical 4-person chairlift, ski areas ideally want construction to be completed from June to October. The process looks like this. All along the mountainside, workers will dig up holes to place metal towers that carry the chairlift. Then, freight trucks will transport the lift's components and drive up the mountain to place tower bottoms, with helicopters flying in the tops of towers. Depending on the lift, there can be 10 to 20 towers to install. The entrance and exit stations will also be installed at this time, complete with motors, wheels, and rollers. Then, a metal cable is trucked in on a giant spool and threaded between each tower. One installed in Steamboat was over 3 miles or 5 kilometers long and are joined together by a cable splicing expert. Now, technically these people exist, but only barely. There are only a handful of them in the world, and at least one of those people has to decide that your cable is cool enough to splice or you're out of luck. But assuming your cable's got the goods, they'll show up and weave it together, first by removing its plastic or rubber core and stitching it back together just so. It's only then that chairs can be placed on the cable one by one, which must undergo pretty strenuous weight tests to make sure they won't snap the cables or fall off while people are riding them. So, being a ski lift company requires massive amounts of money and resources, but the same thing goes for making mediocre educational YouTube content, and there are way more than 2 companies that do that. To understand why there are so few ski lift companies, we need to look at the industry's recent history. Snow sports exploded in popularity in the United States and Europe soon after the first ever chairlifts were introduced to Sun Valley, Idaho in 1937. At this time, the barriers to entering the ski lift industry didn't include quite the same amounts of liability or capital they have today. Recognizing how popular chairlifts were with visitors, ski resorts wanted more, so a new wave of companies popped up. They included Poma, Leitner, Doppelmayr, and Garaventa, which are now part of Doppelmayr-Garaventa or HTI, but also Jan, Wapfer, and Riblet. Many of these companies were started by engineers familiar with skiing or long-haul transportation industries like railroads, which possess similar raw materials to chairlifts, meaning they possessed both the expertise and supply chain knowledge to meet ski areas' needs. All this competition brought innovation, including the detachable chairlift in the mid-80s, which was a chairlift that transported skiers at high speeds but could detach from overhead cables by way of high-powered clamps, which meant at the exit station they'd slow down enough that skiers wouldn't get splattered all over the lodge's nice interior. But by the 90s, the market changed, with companies either shrinking or expanding. Riblet went under because its business model didn't include those newfangled detachable chairs. Jan, once one of the US's most popular ski lift manufacturers, that also undercut their competitors' prices by omitting parts and welding steel for lifts in parking lots, went bankrupt after several of its chairs killed people in Colorado and California, which I'm sure was just a coincidence. Ski areas recognized they needed to get lifts built, tested, and installed as quickly as possible, but also as safely as possible. Meanwhile, Doppelmayr and Poma started acquiring more and more lift manufacturers to meet the increasing demand left by those voids, and became a duopoly in the United States and largely abroad by the 2010s because they could manufacture a range of chairlifts and surface lifts that were rigorously tested and backed by the best liability insurance money could buy. And now, Doppelmayr of USA, which is under the Doppelmayr-Garaventa Group, and Leitner Poma of America, which is under the Poma brand, which itself is under the HTI Group, are located within a few hours of each other. Doppelmayr of USA is in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Leitner Poma of America is based in Grand Junction, Colorado, which also happens to be only a few hours from some of the best ski areas in the world, and also pretty close to this guy's house, one of the few people in the world qualified to turn a big metal line into a big metal circle. And even if smaller independent ski areas don't want to buy new lifts, but still had to fix old ones made by a defunct manufacturer, they might have gotten parts from Skytrack, which specializes in lift modifications and upgrades, and just so happened to be acquired in 2016 by, you guessed it, Disney. Leitner Poem of America. That makes more sense. And even though supply chain issues have delayed lift installation, their businesses will only grow as lifts age and must be replaced or repaired. And with the ski lift industry under their belts, the HTI Group and Doppelmayr-Garaventa are expanding into the urban transportation industry. And while I don't want transit to be controlled by two corporations, I wouldn't mind if my commute was by gondola. And whether you commute by gondola, car, or bus, your schedule is probably packed with work and just existing in the year 2023. Fitting in exercise, hobbies, and healthy eating might be some New Year's resolutions that you've already given up on, and while I can't convince you to do yoga or go to your model train enthusiast meeting, I can tell you about Factor. Factor is the best way to get healthy, ready-to-eat meals that fit your lifestyle. They take the tough stuff out of meal prep with registered dietitians who work hand in hand with chefs to deliver fully prepared, nutritious meals made from scratch right to your doorstep. Factor is owned by HelloFresh, which I've used for years, but offers a faster option for those times when even their fast home cooking takes too long. And it's not a compromise because Factor has a huge variety of meal plans designed by dietitians, including keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, and vegan plus veggie, which includes seafood, meat, and plant-based meal options for whatever you're craving. It's really a great way to get the convenience and variety of takeout without the cost and calories. Honestly, I'd only used HelloFresh before Factor came and sponsored us, but that turned me into a genuine customer, and I now get Factor almost every week. For example, I had the Peruvian shrimp bowl, which was delicious. All I had to do was heat, eat, and enjoy. With flexible schedules, Factor works great for my travel-heavy schedule, as I can easily adjust my order size, share some with friends, skip a week when I'm away, or have a box waiting on the day I get back so I have food right away. So what are you waiting for? Crush your healthy eating goals this year and head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code HI60 to get 60% off your first box today.